Have you ever wondered why some leaders will do anything possible to win or get to an outcome, even if it's at the expense of the people who are part of their team? While others will seem to get to the same place, but they do it with energy and caring, and they put the people who work with them first. Today, we're going to talk about why true leaders care about people instead of caring for the numbers. In other words, instead of caring for the outcome. This conversation is for you if you are taking on a leadership or management role and you want to create an environment where people embrace change and become innovative. This is for you where you want to create a culture where people are willing to take risks and perform at their absolute best. My name is Suzan Hart, and welcome to Unstoppable Mindset. I am so excited to be here. So as you jump on, I am going to ask you to do a few things. As usual, I'm going to ask you to put your name in the comment section, so let me know where you're joining me from. And also to let me know what you do while you're living and who you are called to serve. Who's your divine client? Who are the people you want to just touch, move, and inspire? I'm also going to ask you to bless a life. And what do I mean by that? I mean taking a moment and sharing this live. You can share at the very beginning. I love it when people share and just put it on their page, put it in a group that they're part of, and you might be somewhere in the middle of this event saying, oh my goodness, you know what? This is ideal for this friend or this colleague. I definitely need to share it. Definitely do that. As you come join us, also let me know what inspired you to join me tonight. Is there a question that you want answered? Is there something that you were looking for when you saw this topic? For those of you who are watching the replay, first of all, thank you and hashtag replay. And I want you to do the exact same thing. I know you're watching the recording, but I also want to know where you're joining us from, who you are. So put your name in the comments section. Let us know who you're called to serve and what you do while you're living. Why do we ask that? Because this is our opportunity to do our virtual networking. Every week, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we come together and we get to network. You never know who might be scrolling through the comment sections and see your information and reach out to you and say, I need to learn more about what you do. I also am going to ask you, when you love what you hear, go ahead and bless a life, share the wealth. Why do we do that? Because knowledge is power, they say, but knowledge is only really powerful, one, when we use it. So definitely take something away and put it into action. But it is also more internalized, if that's great English, I'm not sure. We also internalize it when we get into powerful communication, powerful conversation with another person, when we share what we've learned, what we've taken away, and what we're going to do with the information. So I'm going to definitely encourage you to do so. Also, even if you're listening to the replay, what inspired you to keep watching? I want to know. We want to know. All right, so I am going to get this live going. As I said, our topic is why true leaders care for people instead of caring just for the numbers, just for the outcome. This is Unstoppable Mindset, and my name is Suzan Hart. This conversation is truly for you if you are a leader that wants to inspire and create an environment where change and innovation thrives. This is for you if you want to definitely create an environment where people work at their best and they take on this concept of making their best better because you have created the space for it. So let's jump into the topic. So as I was preparing for this, I was reflecting back on the moments where I've had really innovative teams and the moments where I've had teams that weren't so innovative. And what was the difference between the two? And it brought me back to one of the last teams I had the privilege of leading and growing with. When I first arrived, I could tell that these women had loads of experience. but that they were also really good at what they did. But for some reason, I couldn't get the best out of them. Have you ever watched someone underperform and you wonder why? Why is someone that is so intelligent underperforming? Well, this was my big question. And as I learned the history of the organization, I found my answer. You see, the manager who led the team before me, their leader, was someone who focused on the outcomes. Unfortunately, she focused on the numbers, getting the job done, but she didn't actually care how it happened. The environment that was created was one where people felt not cared for. People felt pushed. People felt that they couldn't trust, and they were often berated if they got something wrong or they did something that she thought would threaten them hitting their target. So what was happening were people were playing safe, and when people play safe, they always seem to play small. So that's what I was inheriting. And what began to happen was that I watched people not thrive at work, but I also watched people not enjoy the work that they were doing. I wasn't getting the best out of them, and they weren't getting the best out of me, but they also weren't getting the best out of each and every workday. Who listening? And I see Patricia has joined us. Hello, beautiful Patricia. I see Taria has joined us. I see Facebook user, you say every Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern. Yay, Suzanne, love. Oh, that's Yetta. Hey, Yetta, welcome. I was like, who is that? That is Yetta, welcome. And then there's another Facebook user that's joined us. So please put your name in the comment section so I know exactly who you are. So this was the interesting thing that began to happen, was that they were playing small and they weren't enjoying what they were doing. And I kept asking myself, how can I get this group of people to really begin to stretch, to really begin to grow, to really begin to thrive at work? I wanted them to come to work excited for the day, willing to take on the challenge, right? And I see Tria saying, yes, so true. Playing safe and playing small is very, it's not rewarding at all, right? So this was what I began to do. I realized that I had to create an environment where people felt that they could trust the space. I want you to think of that. I had to create an environment where people felt that they could trust risking putting their creativity, their ideas into the space. They had to risk making mistakes. They had to risk failing. They had to risk looking bad. So it really was, how do I then create this culture? Well, one of the questions I said I was going to answer is the power of guiding principles for success. And so I began to write what I call my GPS, my navigation system. But it was not only my navigation system, it was going to be the navigation system that I used to work with this team. Now, interestingly, this is the same GPS that I use to run my business today. And this is how I work with every single person. So I remember in a meeting talking to the women and saying, okay, I want you to know how I run the space and what you could count on. So I told them that one was I was going to share my guiding principles for success, and they were going to have an opportunity to also add an input. So these were some of the things I said to them. I said my two highest values, the two things that's most important to me is integrity. I do what I say I'm going to do, and people who work with me also do what they say they're going to do. And I said, but this is the interesting thing. None of us are perfect. So if we make a mistake, integrity just means we are going to clean it up, and we are going to reset our integrity. So if I missed an appointment with you, I'm going to call you and say, I am so sorry, I missed an appointment, and I'd like to reset that time. Or if I'm late, I am so sorry I'm late. I'm not going to make excuses. Can we reset a time Or can I make it up to you? We're going to work in this place called integrity. We're going to be our word to each other. I said, that is my highest value. Why? Because a place that has a high level of integrity develops a high level of trust. Now, actually, what I'm doing is I'm also setting the foundation for people to start taking risks, because I'm telling them I have integrity. So you can believe what I say. I will honor my word. So then I said, my second highest value is faith. And what I mean by faith is that I have a willingness to trust the process and trust other people. I have faith in other people. So letting them know I have faith in you and I have a desire for you to have faith in me. So I let them also know that I was going to trust them. I was going to have faith in them. And we were going to create an environment where we had faith in each other and we gave each other the benefit of the doubt, because we believed that each person came to the space with a high level of integrity. So those were the two leading values that govern the space. So I began to create the environment. The other thing I did was I said, I'm going to tell you a few other things that are really important for us to work. These are the principles that are going to guide how we work. I talked about open and honest communication, open, honest, and timely communication. What I said to them was, if I am not happy with something, you are not going to hear it through the grapevine. You will hear it from me directly. I'm going to come to you first. And I'm going to expect the same. And I want you to treat your colleagues the same way. I said, but we're also going to do respectful communication. So you're going to give feedback versus criticism. And we define feedback as giving people information with recommendations of how they could make their best better, what could be done differently, versus just letting them know that that wasn't good enough, it was wrong, and communicating to people in ways that was not respectful or that were hurtful. We talked about having communication that left people whole and complete, so that when someone walked away, they walked away feeling informed, they walked away feeling poured into, but they walked away knowing that their colleague had a commitment for them to grow. So let me see what else I had. I said I wanted a healthy work environment. That meant that we were going to take care of each other's well-being. We were going to make sure that no one worked crazy overtime. We were going to make sure that people took their time off. We were going to make sure that people rest. And we were going to manage each other's well-being and look out for each other. Now, I was working in a crisis environment, so tension and stress was always high. So we were going to take care of each other. Now, one of the key things that we did was, before we left every day, we did a debrief, so that we could leave stuff at work. And the debrief, we took the time that was needed for everybody to go home, leaving the stuff that needed to be in the space. So now I'm creating an environment where conversations were really I'm creating a safe environment for conversations to happen. I told people that we were going to be intentional. And in intentional, we were going to set goals, we were going to be focused, and we were going to work from action plans. And so that was one of the things that we took on. So we took on laser focus, but this was a game changer. I also said that we were going to do this thing called deliberate practice. I use it in my business today. Deliberate practice and mental representation. So in our staff meetings, if you didn't understand something, if you couldn't see it, we were going to make sure that everybody had an opportunity to grasp any concept. We would role play. We would run things out on the floor. We made sure that everybody was on the same page and no one felt ridiculous asking a question. So we created this environment where we practiced what we needed to do. We made sure that everybody understood their roles and understood their responsibility. And I'm looking at a list here because I want to make sure I gave you. And then we developed a community environment. That meant we played together, we laughed together, we recovered together, and we had each other's backs. Once I began to create this environment, things didn't change all at once, because they needed to test out whether this new culture, these new guiding principles were real. They were testing me, they were testing each other. But what began to happen was as they tested and they got a return that was equal to what they expected, magic began to happen. People began to risk. People began to trust. People began to do things a little differently. Now, what that created, the next question I said I was going to answer is how do you create an environment where innovation and change is possible? Well, the next thing that began to happen was I created an environment of trust. So now it was an environment of masterminding and asking great questions. So at every meeting, every staff meeting, I came in with an idea that we were going to mastermind and brainstorm. And because we had this trusting environment, I said, let's build solutions for less. Let's brainstorm. Let's get creative. And I told them that no question was ridiculous, and no idea was out of the box. Like it wasn't possible. But I also said to them to listen like everybody was right. I want you guys to get this. To listen to each other like everybody was right and everybody had a great idea. Why did I do this? Because when we listen from this open place of everybody being right, we listen for the greatness in what they have to say. And what began to happen was rather than knocking each other's ideas, they began to put their ideas together. Well, if this person's right and I'm right, what would happen if we put these things together? And what began was one idea began to add to another idea, and then they would brainstorm, and then they would expand ideas, and suddenly I had innovation happening in the space. And what we were doing, remember I said innovation and change, we were beginning to change from how they used to work to a new innovative and creative way of working. What created the space was these guiding principles that created this environment of safety where people felt comfortable putting their brilliance into the space, right? And then how do we make people the best asset? Well, this was simple for me. You see, I just decided I didn't have all the answers. I decided that they had all the answers. And this is what I began to do. I truly believe that every single one of us is brilliant, and I say this all the time, every one of us is unique and every one of us is special. So with every member of the team, I spent some time looking for their brilliance, looking for their uniqueness, and why they were special. But not only did I look for it, I shared it with every other member of the team. I let them know this is this person's gift. This is where they're brilliant. This is where they're unique. But most importantly, this is the place they are going to lead each and every one of us. And so I found a brilliance in every single team member. And every team member had their area of mastery where when we were dealing with it, they took on leadership. What began to happen was people began to take ownership of their role and responsibility in the team, not their job description responsibility, but their gifting. So when we were brainstorming, people would step up in their gifting and say, I have an idea. And because it was their gifting and people knew it was their gifting, they had a listening for that person and an awareness of their gifts, talents, and treasures that they brought to the table. This created a magic within our team because what began to happen was that when we were in a situation, people would literally say, go get this person and tell her we need her brilliance. And that person would come and feed her colleagues. They would send for another person and say, we need her to lead this process because this is her area of brilliance. And that person would show up and begin to lead the process. What happened in that space began to be magical. Why? Because it was about the people being my biggest asset. And the outcomes available because they were my biggest asset was beyond my wildest dreams. As I continue to lead this group of people, other managers and other leaders would ask me, how did I get them to do these amazing things? How did I get them to work extra? How did I get them to be creative? How did I get them, and check this, to create a sit down dinner for 350 homeless women and have it totally catered by students? How did I get them to do that? I didn't get them to do that. I created the environment where they felt safe to be their brilliant self. They felt safe to push the envelope. They felt safe to be innovative. They felt safe to be creative. And each person worked in their brilliance, and magic began to happen. I didn't make them do a thing. I was able to tap into what was amazing about each of them. You know, one of the things I do know, and I want you guys to get this, is we are the sum total of our whole group, right? And oftentimes, people come to the table trusting their own giftings. But if I only trust my giftings, I'm left with only my resources, my talents, my treasures. But when I begin to trust the giftings of other people, I realize that I am a part of the process. I'm a piece of the puzzle. And that the sum of the whole team is as great is where our greatness lies. But this is the other really interesting thing that begins to happen, is that we are strong as a team as our weakest link. And what people began to realize was at any moment, each and every one of us could be the weakest link. But this is the thing. When you live and work in a space where you don't just count on your brilliance, when you are the weakest link, you look outside of you for greatness. You look outside of you to be poured into. You look outside of you for help. So what happened was, when one team member was the weakest link in their mind, in terms of they were challenged in that moment, they didn't bring their best self to work that day, they would be able to sit down with someone who was strong that day and get poured into, get supported, get someone to pull them up, feed them. And what began to happen were people looked to each other to facilitate growth. Remember, we know each other's brilliance. So greatness says that if I know that Patricia is brilliant at something and I want to make my best better, I'm going to go mentor with her in her area of brilliance and say, show me how to do that. If I know that Sharia is exceptional at communication, I'm going to go to Sharia and say, can you mentor me and help me move from good to great in this area? This created a willingness to say, I'm not good at this. Can you help me? And for others to say, I'm brilliant at this. I can definitely help you. And that began to have how the magic began to happen. The cultural change that happened within that environment, it took me about a year to figure out the challenge. It took about probably 3 months for things to shift. And once the shift happened, it was almost like we hit this tipping point. Once we tipped, it was like magic began to expand. Magic began to expand. But I want to talk about why. When you and I come to a space where we don't trust and we don't feel appreciated, we shrink. We truly do. We shrink and we keep closed, and we are not willing to be vulnerable in any way, shape, or form. That's just our natural self-preservation instinct. When you and I come to a space where we don't trust, we don't communicate above ground. Communication happens underground, and this whisper culture begins to grow. And what happens is the whisper culture and the lack of trust expands. However, when you can use guiding principles to create an environment where people feel safe, what happens is they feel safe to be vulnerable. They feel safe to show their weaknesses and their faults, and suddenly everything becomes above board. When things become above board, change can happen quickly. Change can happen in a snap of a finger. Why? Because there's honesty and trust in the space. There is a willingness to be creative in the space, and there's a willingness to be vulnerable and exposed. That's the key thing. People stop hiding and they begin to open up and be vulnerable. But this is the key thing that also begins to happen, is that we close off when we have a fear of being shamed, when we have a fear of being blamed, when we have a fear of being judged, because that is our biggest fears. Because when I feel the possibility of being shamed, blamed, judged, I don't feel safe, and I'm not willing to be vulnerable, and I feel like I'm going to lose something. When those things are taken out of the culture, and there's an expectation that there's open communication but no shaming, there's open communication but no blaming, there's open communication but no judgment, it creates an environment where people can risk being vulnerable, where people can risk being clear, where people can risk being honest. And that's where the magic happens. So, what I started this conversation, I said that, true leaders, in my opinion, right, are more concerned with their biggest asset, which is their people, than the outcome. Because this is what true leaders know, is that when I take care of my people, they will overproduce. They will overperform because I can get the best out of them. Because when people are vulnerable, they excel. When I don't just focus on the outcome, but I focus on the success of the team, magic happens. So this is what I mean by success. Success is not the goal that we're going after. Success is not the target. Success is not the actual outcome. I define success, and someone may want to put this in the comment section. I define success as the experience on the journey. So how many of you have gone on a journey to an outcome, a goal, and had it occur in such a way that you were left exhausted, devastated, hurt maybe, and saying, I'll never do that again. That was too hard and so too painful. But then you've gone on another journey and it was equally challenging. But the way in which it occurred, the environment that the leadership created was so powerful that you learned lessons, you grew, you risked being vulnerable and survived and actually expanded. You developed new relationships. You learned a new level of trust in yourself. You began to believe in yourself more. You saw things that were possible for you that possibly you didn't see before. Those are the successes that great leaders go after. If I can give you an experience where you feel you become more, you learn more, you grow, that is where success lives for you, because that's what you get to take away. You will give me the energy necessary to not only achieve the goal and hit the outcome, but you will often give me the energy to surpass the outcome that I was anticipating, because there's a win in it for you. You see, true leaders understand that win-win is not about the company's win. It's about the joy of hitting the target, but it's also the joy of who each person gets to become along the journey. But it's the bigger joy of how a team transforms, gels, and grows together that makes the magic happen. So that is why, in my opinion, true leaders know that the outcome will happen. The sale will occur, we will hit the target if I take care of my people. And I also know if I take care of my people, the way I take care of my people, the environment I create for my people that I work with, the team, it is the same environment they will create for clients. It's the same environment they'll create for anyone they come in contact with. And that's where the win happens. So let's see what you guys are taking away. So I want to ask you this. What is one thing that you are going to take from this conversation and say, I can implement this one thing right now? So let me see what we got. Let's see. Patricia's loving innovation. She's taking lots of notes. I love it. I have Sharia going, I'm living that now, and I'm loving the journey, and those I'm locking arms with. I got you, Sharia. And Sharia saying hello to Juliet. A Facebook user says, great leaders understand their why and help realize their why. So true. And you see, great leaders understand the reason they exist, the reason they're in a leadership role. And the reason you are in a leadership role is not about the goal. It's usually bigger. You see, for me, I have this belief that I can help people become unstoppable. That's why this program is called Unstoppable Mindset. I believe I can create environments where people meet the next best version of themselves, that they do not know what they are capable of. And when I create an environment that draws that out of them, magic happens. That's why I believe I exist. And so leaders know why they're coming to the table beyond hitting the target and achieving the goal. I see Kathy here. Hello, how are you? I see developing a culture of even greater appreciation for each team member. I love it, Yetta. Thank you so much. Patricia's putting win-win is not about my company. Win. It's not about my company's win. She's saying, wow. Yeah, it's not just about your company's win. It's about how do I create an environment where each member of the team has a personal win. When we go on a journey, and I'm asking them to give more, give extra, I'm also mindful of what's the win for them? What's the lesson that they can walk away with? What's the transformation? What's the area of growth? How do I ensure that they come out and they say, on this journey, I made this best even better. I have a higher belief in myself. I didn't know I could do this, and now I'm certain I could do this. This is where I live. I believe that true leaders do not create followers. They create leaders. I call it causing leadership. They cause leadership. I truly believe that when I am at my best, the people I'm working with are supposed to be able to replace me. That's what I believe. That they should no longer need me when my job is done. They should be able to replace me. That within them is everything necessary to step into leadership and lead in their own unique way. That's my role and responsibility as a leader. And in order to do that, my responsibility is to help people find their greatness, step into their greatness, expand, and learn that the first person they lead is themselves. And in doing so, they inspire others to take on leadership. That is the beauty of what we're talking about. Patricia's putting one thing to create an environment for me to be vulnerable and for others to be vulnerable and safe. I commit to that today. I love it. Thank you. That's a commitment, girlfriend. That is truly a commitment. Yeah. So this is what I want to leave you with. You know, one of the reasons these conversations are so key is we are in a time where, you know, I'm watching what's going on social media. I'm watching what's going on in the news. I'm watching what's going on, you know, on different parts of our the planet. And I truly believe that this is a time more than any where we are going to be required to be innovative and step into change. And what I mean by stepping into change is that we have gone along, many people have gone along status quo for a long time, gone along not pushing the envelope, not testing the waters, not challenging what they see is going on in the world, in their workplaces, in spaces. And that's why we see, you know, the fear of difference. We see people afraid to share their brilliance. We see people afraid to share what is unique about them. I truly believe that we're in a time where a new type of leadership is required, where people say, I'm going to create an environment where leaders can be fully self-expressed and they can bring their whole self to the workplace. Because when someone brings their whole self to the workplace wins, right? Now, yes, we're going to have guidelines and rules and expectations, but imagine someone willing to fight for their own growth, to fight to excel, to be their best self, because the environment to which they go to every day allows that to happen. This is what I believe. This is the time that we're in. And so my goal is to inspire us to not just go along with status quo, but to challenge and to say, how do I make my best better today? How do I, no matter where I am, create an environment where I left it better, where I lead a process and I challenge people to be their best self. That's my commitment. So you have been listening to Unstoppable Mindset. My name is Suzan Hart. We have a gift for you, as we always do. So there is an opportunity for you to learn more about Unstoppable Mindset and Mindset Mastery. We have our mini course. We'll drop that in the comments section. For those of you who have not done it before, definitely take advantage of that. And if this conversation really resonates with you and you're like, you know what, I want to take my leadership to a new level. I want to be one of those leaders that create environments where innovation and change is how we do what we do. We're going to drop in an opportunity for you to sit down with me and continue this conversation. Come with a burning question. Come with something that you want to take on. When you click on that link, put empowered leadership in the subject line, and then tell me what you want to talk about. I will be happy to sit down with you, because we are in a time of change, and in times of change, we need great leaders. So you're listening to Unstoppable Mindset. My name is Suzan Hart, and I will see you back here next week, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we will be back into our inclusive leadership conversation. So this is diversity, equity, and cultural competency. So you don't want to miss that conversation. Take care, and I will see you back here next week.